Hi there, everybody. Good afternoon. We're running 3 or 4 minutes late for this afternoon's people-to-people market update live here on Facebook and on YouTube. Apologies that we're running a little bit late today. It's been mad here, which is good news for everybody. And I've been chatting to our Victorian team actually, which is there's a lot going on in Victoria at the moment. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Thanks for joining us. We're going back to our usual format this week. So this is what we'll be doing today. We'll be going, I'll give you an overview of the market conditions for the jobs across Australia this week. We'll go through our usual numbers section where I'll update you on the latest stats about the employment market in Australia and in New Zealand. We'll also join Chris Williams from our Sydney team for a market update specifically around Sydney accounting. We'll also be joining Liz Punchin from our Melbourne office, who will be giving us a job hunting tip. Chris will also has apparently an opportunity that he wants to talk to us about as well with our job opportunity of the week as well. Finally, I'll give you some dates of what's up and coming this week or coming up with People to People over the next few weeks. And if you do have any questions during today's broadcast, then please make sure you pop them in the comments. So we're really keen to get some participation. So if you have any questions at all, please pop them in the comments either on YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll answer your questions directly as well. So let's get into it. Let's start with my weekly market wrap. Okay, so what's going on out there in the jobs market at the moment? Well, it was when we did our wrap up last week, we had a specific outline of what was going on post-COVID in terms of the response in the market. And at the end of that week, I was feeling quite upbeat about the way that the market was responding, particularly here in Sydney. So the number of jobs that were listed with us here at P2P had improved remarkably in the last couple of weeks. But what we've experienced, I suppose, this week has been that we've tailed off. There's a tapering off in terms of that, in terms of the number of vacancies that have been listed with us. And indeed, in some states, we've even gone backwards. I was mentioning Victoria earlier this afternoon. Yes, Victoria is definitely feeling a change, particularly with the change in consumer confidence or confidence generally in Victoria, and it's flowing through to the jobs market, I think. It's a similar experience in Australia as that we had in our New Zealand. Frog Recruitment is the brand that we operate under in New Zealand. And for the month of June, we actually had an okay last couple of weeks. The number of placements that we're making were good, but we've sort of came up over the hill and now we're coming down on the other side. So it's almost a little bit of a false dawn as we've come through or the lockout, that we're no longer locked up, I suppose. We can't think of even the right language. I've forgotten how to even explain what it's like to be able to go out to places without being restricted. Yes, so since the lockouts, the restrictions were lifted, then we saw an improvement in the market in New Zealand, and then it's tapered off. That's exactly what's happened here in Australia as well. So I would suggest that the week before last was that little bit of a boost, and now it's starting to slow down, and it's not helped in any way by what's going on in Victoria. Okay, so now let's get to my regular numbers section, and I've got a few numbers or statistics that I'd like to share with you this afternoon. And I've thrown Jaden, the guy behind the scenes here, and people who may have seen him last week live on Facebook, thrown him a little bit in the deep end here because I was running a little bit late. The numbers I'd first like to look at is the consumer confidence numbers from ANZ. Now, yes, this is the one. Fantastic. Good job, Jaden. Fabulous. So I wanted to, this is a little bit blurry, so my apologies there, and it comes from ANZ and Roy Morgan, this research. But I, in my history, have always felt that there is a correlation between consumer confidence and the jobs market, particularly as experienced by recruitment agencies, because what we thrive on is people changing jobs, not necessarily new job creation. And when people feel confident to change jobs, then we see more activity in the marketplace. So I wanted to show you this one today because we can see obviously the huge decline as the COVID started at the beginning of 2020, but particularly the 4.6% drop in the last week as a direct result of what's happening in Victoria. So that's that little tick at the bottom there. Now, for those who are negative out there, you'd probably say we're now returning to consumer confidence levels that would be occurring in a normal recession, and you can see some of those low points in history prior to that. So the GFC, for example, in 08 and 09. So let's now move to the next one that I wanted to share with you, which is a stall in jobs from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So what this one here is also from the Australian Bureau of Statistics and ANZ Research. And I wanted to show you this because these numbers come from single touch payroll. So this is the new system that was put in last year. And basically we can see the number of jobs, people who are in a job, and the number of and the amount of the actual payroll numbers in real time. So you can see here, these are the weekly numbers from the ABS. The orange line is employee wages. You can see how the dramatic drop from the 14th of March, which is we're saying is the baseline. You can see the dramatic drop as we went into April. And if you've been watching our broadcasts here, you would say that Easter was the low point in the market and we had a steady increase. And I wanted to put this up again today because you can see the employee jobs, that's the blue line, has flattened out in the last couple of weeks. And I think this is exactly what I was saying, our experience in New Zealand and here in Australia is that we've got that restrictions being lifted, and then the bump that we got from that, and now we're flattened out a little bit. Or is it a fact of something to do with consumer confidence in Victoria? And not entirely sure. Let's have a look at this by industry, Jaden, if we can pull up the next one, which is single touch payrolls by industry, which I thought was very interesting for everybody. This is the single touch change in Australian payrolls since the 14th of March. And thanks to Callum Pickering over at Indeed, he is for these numbers. If you get a chance to follow him on Twitter, I definitely do that because that's where I got these numbers from. And you can see that obviously, and there's no surprises here, accommodation and food services had the largest decline, arts and recreation second. I don't think there's any surprise there. What is a surprise is that electricity, gas, water and waste services actually have increased, and similarly with financial and insurance services. We've seen that a little bit in terms of even in our legal sector, that insurance litigation has been, those firms specialising in that area have certainly picked up, but also, I mean, as a result of bushfires and the like as well. So there's financial and insurance services has seen an improvement. Mining is the least declining. You can see third from the bottom, and then public administration and safety. So really interesting. If you want to see that in more detail, then jump on to Callum Pickering's Twitter account. The final number I wanted to show you, which is not all bad news, really, because I feel like I'm constantly talking about bad news, and that is the retail growth by state. Now, this is comparing March to May to comparing to December to February. And you can actually see, so it's a 3-month average growth, yeah? That in all states, except for Victoria, so I'm getting a hard rap here, have increased anywhere in between, say, 1% in Tasmania and in the Northern Territory up to 8% in retail growth. And even here in New South Wales, it's we're not going backwards in terms of retail sales. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, I suppose, but also some good news in the marketplace out there. So that's it for the numbers. Now let's get to our spotlight on a market, and let's talk with Chris Williams from the Sydney accounting team. Let's do that now.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
G'day, Chris. I'm a little bit frazzled. Like I was running late coming into this, coming into the broadcast today. So yeah, it's. I'm keen to hear though what's happening in the market in Sydney for accountants.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. That's for sure. I guess the way it's differed from last year is quite drastic. So from what we've really seen a big change around this time of year, I guess you would see a massive increase in the likes of assistant accountants, financial accountants leading up to year end. What we have seen, though, is more so a rush on the credit control side, which is probably quite obvious given the current economic impact that we've had. We did expect these types of roles, I guess, to really be coming through in April and May, but it's almost as if businesses were holding off for as long as possible. And then I guess as year end was coming to a close, there was a little bit of a panic. And I think every second job we had that came on in the last 2 weeks was either, credit control or some sort of reconciliations, in particular on the AR side.
So have you had much on the statutory accounting side? That's what you'd normally expect to help people through year end that way?
Yeah, not at this moment. What we have seen at that level is perhaps maybe when you would initially bring on board a temp or a contractor, a few businesses of, I guess, trying to really cross-train across the team and, maybe absorb some duties and, get some initial training on something they wouldn't have done in previous years. I think some of the roles that are still coming through are those assignments where you don't necessarily have the time to put the training in and you need to get the results as quick as possible with the likes of, those collection calls or just getting through some reconciliations as you're, coming to the end of the deadline.
I know that I was sitting nearby to James Dalton from the Perm Accounting team, and there seems to be, and just listening to some of the conversation, there seems to be a lot of movement in payroll. Have you experienced that on the temp and contract side?
Yeah. So payroll is something that always seems to find me in the market. In particular, it's usually based on the northern beaches. But payroll for I guess that there's a few different reasons that we're kind of seeing. I think when JobKeeper obviously came through, there was a lot of added stress for those in payroll. And, perhaps they thought that they weren't getting rewarded or getting the recognition that they deserve, I guess, through the extra workload that they were doing. And, a lot of them have seen it as, a better time than ever to make a change in their own search. Even though from the temp side of things, actually just in the last day or so, we've took on another payroll temp assignment, but also we've been working on the compliance side. I think, I guess, as businesses maybe taking a magnifying glass to the way that they're operating, it's, now's a better time than ever to, really assess, are we being the most proactive the way we approach things? Is this the most efficient way to be doing things, especially as, payroll traditionally doesn't work from home, and we have actually seen that, change to a work from home lifestyle. Do we really need to have X amount of people in the team, or is this really the most effective system for us? These are the conversations that we're definitely seeing have.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, so if we just go back to year end again, is there any particular industries that there's a greater demand at the moment?
Surprisingly, property. Property has been an industry that we probably wouldn't have thought there'd be too much movement in, but especially from a credit side, but also from an assistant accountant level. We've seen a few positions come through. I think traditionally where these businesses might have hired a financial accountant for year end, they've opted to go with an assistant accountant who, has the exposure to some of the reporting elements, but still quite happy to get involved with some of the more transactional duties, get involved in the AP, the AR, get the best of both worlds, I guess, in that essence. But FMCG then as well, probably no surprise, has stayed quite constant throughout this period. Although the panic buying, or it's starting up again. These businesses.
I think that there was I saw this morning that shelves were empty in Bondi Junction for some reason.
Yeah, I thought we had said goodbye to that, but the FMCG business is it's always going to stay steady, especially if you're dealing with products that people need in their everyday lives, whether that be toothpaste, bread, these sort of products. So they've stayed consistent. And as such, we actually just took on another new opportunity in the AR space, working for an FMCG business.
Okay, well, maybe we can talk about that under the job opportunity section later. So is there any other, if I can ask you another question just generally about the market, what do you, I mean, despite everything that's going on, what's been the biggest surprise, and do you think, out of this whole?
Yeah, I think the consumer confidence is probably maybe not reflective in some of the results we've seen, but it's definitely improving. And I think the mindset for a lot of finance managers, financial controllers out there is they need people. It's just waiting, I guess, to get that final approval. So it's once they get that final approval, it's not as if the workload isn't there. It's just making sure that they go through the same and correct procedures to get to that space. But things are definitely picking up, I guess from what we've seen, businesses are definitely making decisions a bit quicker than what they usually would when it comes to the interview process. I think the mindset is, as more people enter the market, it doesn't always necessarily mean a stronger skill set in the market, and businesses really want to make sure that they snap those people up as they enter.
Okay, well, that's I suppose a nice segue. If we have anybody who's watching online who may be immediately available and looking and has the skills, accounting skills, or by the sounds of it, credit control and receivables at the moment, then how would anybody get in touch with you?
Yeah. So you can reach me on via email, which is just christopher.williams@people2people.com.au, or feel free to give me a call on 0282709785.
Okay, we'll make sure we put your contact details in the comments there as well. Let me see if there's any questions that have come through whilst we've been talking. There's nothing there now, but we'll come back to you, Chris. So if you do have a question for Chris, I know that Chris has got our job opportunity. But now let's go to Liz Punchin from our Melbourne office, who has our job hunting tip of the week.
Hi, Mark.
Now, is this your first time on Facebook Live and YouTube?
It is, yeah, and you get to see me twice in one day. Lucky you.
Yeah.
So.
We were online with the Victorian board meeting, so good to see you again. So what's your tip for the job hunter out there at the moment?
Yeah, so I thought I'd focus today specifically on job applications. So we are hearing in Melbourne at the moment, there are candidates that are going all guns blazing, applying for jobs on a daily basis. And then there are also other candidates that are admitting at the moment that they've just put their job search completely on hold for the time being. So my tip for today is you do need to have that even balance. So you can create job alerts, of course, on Seek, and even job alerts on the People2People website. So you may, from that, not necessarily feel like you have to be on Seek all day, every day, but really looking at when the ads are being advertised as well. So particularly ads that are advertised by recruiters and specifically at People2People, the first 24 to 48 hours is really critical. We like to fill roles quickly. So if you have applied for a role a few days or a week into the process, you potentially have missed out on getting considered. So, and of course, looking at the job criteria as well to make sure that you really do have the relevant experience to be considered for the role.
Okay, good. And it was interesting that with creating job alerts, etc. Do you suggest that people do have job alerts from multiple different platforms, or should they just stick with People2People and Seek, or is there others that they should?
I think it doesn't hurt to have a few job alerts going for you. You can always cancel them or add more. But of course, having a job alert on Seek is always a good option. And then, of course, we always will be advertising all of our vacancies. So having a job alert on our website is a good recommendation as well.
Yeah. So if you're on there today, it's up in the, I don't know if I got the right side. Would it be this side? There we go. Yes, so it'd be up this side. I've probably got that way wrong on the P2P website, but there's a login. One says timesheets and the other says login. That's where you can create your account and you can create your own job alerts there. I'd encourage everybody to do that. It's interesting. There's a few other different types of job boards out there too, which people may be interested in, where there are aggregators. And what aggregators do is they actually, and you know this, Liz, but what they do is they scrape jobs from other places and they put them all in one place. So there's a few aggregators in the Australian marketplace. There's Jora, which I think is owned by Seek, and there's Indeed, which is also owned. Which is one of the world's largest job board, and they are aggregators. So what you'll tend to find is that they will scrape jobs that other employers haven't actually paid to put an ad up on a particular job board. So maybe worthwhile sort of spreading the love a little bit there in terms of looking for or getting those job alerts out there as well. And while I've got you, Liz, how is the Melbourne market with what's going on down there?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the cases are consistently in double digits, aren't they? So, so we are still working from home, obviously following government advice, and a lot of our clients are doing the same. So that certainly has impacted hiring decisions, particularly on the temp side of things. But we are seeing consistent permanent opportunities coming through from our clients, which is good to see. So yeah, fingers crossed we can get the cases under control, because we're very optimistic once there is more office presence in offices that recruitment will start to pick up again.
Now, we've had a couple of questions here that have come through. The first one is, would you recommend registering with an agency at the moment? I think I know your answer to that one, Liz.
Of course, yes. Yeah, we meet with candidates virtually at the moment on a weekly basis, of course, in Melbourne and across all of our offices. So you can definitely reach out. We have a web inquiry option, or of course, you can contact us directly applying to the roles that we have advertised. It's always good to see what we are recruiting in at the moment, and that will give you a good sense of if your experience is going to be relevant to the types of roles that we recruit as well.
Okay, now I've had another question here from Shabili. Apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Hi, is there any agency or company that helps people to make them competent specifically for experienced immigration? Oh, okay. So yes, there is no agency out there, Shabili, who does that. There are immigration agents that you could actually help, that could help you out with that, but there's no recruitment agency as such that will help you transfer to the Australian marketplace, and particularly with the market the way it is now, and with our border restrictions, I think you'd find that extraordinarily difficult. I hope that answers your question there. So thanks, Liz, for your job hunting tip. Now, if somebody does want some more advice from you, how should they get in touch with you in Vic?
Yeah, sure. So my email address is elizabeth@people2people.com.au, and my direct line is 0390987423.
And I know you're all over social media, so if you look up Liz Punton, you'll find her on every platform you possibly can. So I'm sure she'll be able to answer your questions there as well. Thanks, Liz. Thank you very much for that. So no worries at all. Let's go back and have a quick chat to Chris again with his job opportunity of the week.
Yeah, so thanks, Mark. So obviously building on what we were discussing before with the increase in payroll. So an exciting opportunity that actually just came on as of this morning is a 6-month temp assignment based in the Sydney CBD with a strong view to extend. Essentially, their payroll manager is being seconded to work on an improvement and an upgrade on their time and attendance. So as such, they really need someone who can hit the ground running and help take over their weekly payroll, which is around 500 people. The only criteria that they're really looking for, open to any industry experience, but ideally someone with Sage MicroPay, just due to the fact that they really need to get someone who can hit the ground running. And unfortunately, due to the payroll manager being seconded, there isn't enough opportunities to really go through a whole training process. So someone with the Sage MicroPay. The assignment is to start as soon as possible. Could even start as soon as Monday if you could reach out and get in touch with me before the close of business today. And the opportunity is paying up to $43 an hour plus super. So definitely above market rate as well.
Yeah, great. I was just about to ask you if what were the dollars on this one. So, so is there any particular version of Sage MicroPay at all, or is it just that they need to have had that experience?
Yeah, just Ideally, recent experience using the system, just so you're familiar with, the different reports and how to navigate around that. But in terms of, any other large systems that you've used, if you could bring that further experience with you, it'll definitely be something that'd be ideal. And obviously, they do use Connex. If you've got it, great, but definitely not essential.
To put you above the competition then. Okay, fantastic. Right, I am conscious of time. We've been online now for 25 minutes, so we'll make sure that we pop the job ad into the comments so that if you are interested. And Chris, just for everybody, again, your email address. Actually, I can see them in the contents, or maybe your phone number, so that they can get in touch with you if it's an urgent need.
Yeah, definitely. So best way is just to give me a call on 0282709785. And especially if you're interested in the payroll opportunity, I'm on the phone until the end of today. So feel free to put for a call.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks again for that opportunity. So that brings us to the end of the broadcast. Just a couple of little things I wanted to talk about in terms of what's coming up next. But before I do that, a special shout out to Mary Savova in our Melbourne office, who last week was voted as the Recruitment Consulting Services Association in Australia and New Zealand's Rising Star of the Year. So congratulations to Mary in our Melbourne office, and she's been on this broadcast previously as well. So congratulations there. Our next webinar is coming up in, I think, the week after next. It's a Thursday, and that is with Kate Christie. And she's written a whole bunch of books, mainly on time management. Time Stylers, I think, was one of the books that she's written. But she's actually done a series of breakfasts for people-to-people throughout Australia and New Zealand that was very highly recommended. This time, she's doing our webinar, which is how to maximize your productivity during and post-business. Not as usual. So Kate Christie webinar coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I'll pop the details in the comments as well. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. And thank you again, Chris, from our Sydney office, Sydney accounting office. Thanks for joining us. And thank you also to Liz Punchin from Melbourne, all the way from infected Melbourne. There we go. Fabulous. All right. And thank you, everybody else, for joining us. And we'll see you next week at 12:30 on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks again.